Media. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. I am joined this week by James Cratch. Keith Sargent is busy. I'm just going to leave that there and let everybody panic about that. So anyway, Cratch, you were not with us at the Liberty game. How was Detroit? You were out there with the Giants. That looked like that was another fun NFL game.
Who really cares that I was in Detroit? You saw Greg. That's what we're talking about.
I did. Everyone. I saw Greg Schiano. It was like, and I got to tell you, it's funny. We've been talking about him in the hypothetical for so long. Like, what if Greg? What if Greg? And then when he's in front of you, you're like, oh, that's right. He is an actual human being. And there he is. So if you didn't see the post, he was at the New Jersey Hall of Fame induction ceremony. For Jerry Eisenberg. He was the presenter, and because Jerry unfortunately couldn't make it due to an illness, not serious, but he just couldn't fly out here. He was also accepting on Jerry's behalf. So, it was just funny to see him. And, I cracked. I said to him, "You look great." And he said, "Yeah, well, I'm not exactly leading the stressful lifestyle right now." Like, hey, coach, that could change. I know exactly what you could do to get a little stress in your life.
Yeah, no, I saw it. Like, I saw little snippets. Obviously, I think the first thing that kind of popped in my head was he's wearing a red tie.
Yeah.
And knowing Greg, I don't think – let me take this back. I don't, Greg. I've actually never spoken to Greg. But knowing what you guys have told me and what I've heard over the years, I have to think that he didn't just coincidentally – pack a red tie for this trip.
Yeah, I have to imagine after coaching at Ohio State too, he must have a closet full of red ties.
That's true.
That's part of it. But yeah, you're right. There's nothing that he's done that he's the kind of guy who thinks of everything. So there's certainly possible. I will say that I know this has been like a Rutgers Twitter thing that's sort of driven me crazy about when you guys could ask Greg if he wants the job. Well, he's there to set the scene. We're at the Paramount Theater in Asbury Park. He gets in there a little late. He has to walk the red carpet. So here's Jason Alexander and, George R.R. Martin and all these people going down with all the throngs of the cameras who show up for this thing. And Harry Carson goes on, then Greg goes on to stage and with his wife and, they wave, take photos. And then he's on the red carpet and our Pat Lanny asked the question that everybody's been waiting for someone to ask, which was quite simply, are you interested in the job? And Cratch, I know this is going to surprise you. Greg Schiano did not want to answer this question. He very politely declined to, he's a guy who's been in this for 30 years. He just sidestepped it. I mean, this is what we knew was going to happen the entire time.
Yes. And look, I think that, since this whole thing has started, I guess, a month ago, exactly, I think, or pretty close to it. I think Chris Ash got fired on December 28th, I think?
Yep.
Maybe 29th? I'm not sure. There's been like this kind of like incessant push to find a reason for Greg not to be the coach, whether it's the anti-Schiano crowd, for lack of a better term, that, with all the various reasons and justifications and disqualifications, or people just saying, oh, who knows Greg's interested. I mean, I think it's pretty clear the guy's interested in the job.
Right. He's interested on his terms. He's not
on his terms.
That's the best way you can describe it.
Yeah. If he was not interested on his terms, he would, I'm pretty sure he would call Ryan Hart and be like, hey, Ryan, take it down a notch, or former players. Like he, in these situations, when a guy is not interested in the job, they let the world know.
Right. Yes. Yep, you're absolutely right. And I got the vibe, and this is funny. We've talked about this just in reporting this. Coaching search is hard to report about because there's just a limited amount of real information, and the rest of it is theories. And we always have theories about what's going on. And this falls on everyone. This falls under the theory category. I'm telling you when I say this up front, but I just had a vibe about him that, I don't know, the best way I could describe it, just seeing him in his element, seeing him at the New Jersey Hall of Fame, where I'm sure the thought had popped into his head. He's a proud guy. Like, I could be walking on this stage in a different setting someday. The one thing I'll say, and this is like a hard thing for him, that he had to present, he had to describe, he gave a nice speech about Jerry, which, again, Jerry's been in there for 6 decades. It's hard to summarize his career. And then had to read Jerry's speech, which I think Jerry writes in his own expressive voice. No one else in the world writes like him. So that was difficult. So he comes off, he nails both of them. He comes off and I just shake his hand and say, great job. And now there's Bob Mulcahy's behind him. And Greg slips into the bathroom for a minute, and I'm talking to former AD Bob Mulcahy. I don't think I'm betraying Bob's trust when I tell this story, but Bob grabbed me by the arm, and he goes, Steve, that right there is why that man should be coach again. I just laughed, but Bob makes a point. It's just a guy who represents the program well.
I saw a little bit of the video, but it's really interesting. I was talking to someone at Rutgers who said, longtime employee at Rutgers, and basically, I don't think I'm giving away anything. That person has a job that requires them to be around the football team and the football coach from time to time. And they said, Greg had this presence about him. And they said, Kyle Flood, it was different, but Kyle had a presence about him too. And the guy said, Chris Ash did not have the presence that Kyle had, definitely didn't have the presence Greg had. You saw in that video that presence. Yep. Greg he kind of takes over the room. He is the guy. All the eyes in the room are on him. And he's captivating and he's funny and he's, all that stuff. So I think that's the big thing. Like, people have said, sometimes it felt like I've heard people on the program say that sometimes with Ash, it's not so much when he was with his players, but when he was, dealing with the outward facing, the fans, the media, it felt like he was kind of trying to play the role of the head coach. Greg is a head coach.
Exactly. It's all the ancillary stuff that goes around it. No one, I'm sure given everything equal, X's and O's, and Chris Ash handled it well. But really the job is, that is only 20-30% of the job.
Yes.
Maybe even less. Football coaching is not the big part about being a head football coach. And that's important to remember. It is being the public face of the program. It's being out there among people. There's a reason why people like Ron Garuti or all of the boosters love this guy.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't always love him, but there's they certainly appreciated him, and he schmoozed them. He played that side of the game well, and I think you just see another glimpse of that. All that said, I still don't know what the hell's going to happen. He still hasn't had this conversation, just to my knowledge, with anybody at Rutgers. We're a month in. And that's sort of like, I wonder if these next 2 weeks, Cratch, are when we finally get some clarity as to what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to start kind of moving. Obviously, Rutgers has an open date coming up. Some of the other, a lot of teams around the country are hitting open dates, so you might suddenly have a situation where now, the season's kind of crystallizing. We kind of know, what jobs are in trouble around the country, what jobs are not. I mean, perfect example, the team Rutgers is playing this week. When Chris Ash got fired, I figured Illinois was going to fire Lovie Smith a couple weeks after that, and all of a sudden, the Illini, Rutgers fans don't want to hear, but they were going to go to market with a better job than Rutgers. They pay more, They got better facilities, they're in the Big Ten West. Lovie has recruited some kids. But now, Illinois is 4-4, and they got Rutgers this week, and they got Northwestern, which is just abysmal.
Right.
Northwestern,
Michigan State too. Michigan State's no good.
So all of a sudden, Lovie went from people thinking he was going to be fired, and Lovie's probably going to a bowl game.
Yep.
And the crazy thing is, I wish Rutgers could play Northwestern this year, but I don't know. Northwestern might be the worst team in the Big Ten.
Oh, man, they're bad. Yeah.
So no, I just think that's but now I think, and we've already kind of heard it. Maybe guys who aren't serious contenders, but coaches around the country who realize that especially assistant coaches realize their guy might move on or their guy might be in trouble. They start to kind of poke around, and I think you're going to also see sitting head coaches start to poke around, and guys who are out of the game but want to get back in there. So I do think we could see a lot of movement in the next couple of weeks. I agree with you on that.
Right. All right. Meanwhile, we had a victory. Hey, that's new. That was different. Happy for the players. Certainly, there was a feeling of relief. I kind of have gone back and forth. My first thought is like, oh, thank God they won. It doesn't matter who they're playing. Think about 48 hours later. I was like, gee, you're really going to dunk Gatorade on the head coach after beating Liberty. I get it, though. It was a necessary thing. You had a good tweet, I thought, about this, that, it was really a good game plan, a good game strategy from Nunzio to use what little advantages they have. And it worked.
Yeah, no, I mean, I watched a good amount of the game, as I was in transit to Detroit. I listened on the plane. I was able to get the Rutgers Game Day app. I'm going to give them a shout out. I was able to, for the most part, stream, Chris Carlin and Ray Lucas and Eric over the air in Fooch with a very, crappy airplane Wi-Fi, which I thought was pretty impressive. No, I thought they had a really good game plan. I mean, look, I don't want to nitpick too much. The defense was bad again.
Yeah.
I just, got to give Chris Ash credit because Andy Boo, 4 games in, it has been a catastrophe on that side of the ball.
Right.
But hey, Turnout got the big sack. They got some stops. So giving them credit. They played well enough to win. And look, the offside on that onside kick after Liberty got that, cut it to 10, or I think it was 10, or I'm not 13, whatever it was. That guy was not offside. They recovered that kick. I think if Liberty gets the ball back, who knows what would have happened. It was still like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes left in the game. I was sitting waiting for an airport shuttle to the Marriott to show up. It took like 40 minutes, but that's neither here nor there. No, but they played very well. I thought Lang had a really good game. I think you said it much more accurate than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he threw for 160 yards, I think, or so against Maryland in the first game after the coaching change, but he missed a lot of those. It didn't seem like he missed anything. They were able to use him as a runner. I don't know if that really carries over to beat Illinois or any of the other teams left on the schedule, but it's a good win. You avoided a big embarrassment by losing to Liberty after giving them $1 million. You got 2 wins. I think I said this at the start of the coaching change. Nunzio, if he beats Liberty and finds a way to win a Big Ten game, I thought it would be a smashing success for him. He's halfway there now, so we'll see if they can get something done over the last 4 games.
Yeah, and I have to say I did like the one thing. The best part about it was aggressiveness from Nunzio.
Yes.
And they Liberty marches down the field and scores a touchdown at 7-0. Next possession, it looks like it could be 3 and out for the Rutgers offense. If Nunzio decides to go deep in his own territory on 4th and 1, if that doesn't succeed, I think Rutgers loses. But if Rutgers punts, I think there's a chance Rutgers loses. I mean, the way that Liberty scored at ease early in the game, just to me, that was really a ballsy call, a right call.
Yes,
I think that any coach who comes in here, we'll find a spot for Nunzio on his staff. I do believe that he's certainly shown enough at this point that you would think that he would be a welcome part of it. So then he's got, obviously the next 4 weeks are going to be much more challenging, but. Yeah. Hey, it's something.
Yeah, no, I agree. I personally don't see him being the offensive coordinator just because, he doesn't have great talent, and I understand it took him a while to kind of implement everything, but I just don't think he's going to show enough as a play caller that someone's going to say, hey, we're going to hire you as you'll but if it's tight ends coach, running backs coach, even quarterbacks coach.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Like, Ash didn't really have a set quarterback coach on his staff. McNulty handled them with the OC. They've got Drew Lascari now. If you bring in a offensive coordinator who, if the head coach brings in an OC who wants to specialize in tight ends, Nunzio could be the quarterback's coach. If Rutgers is 2 linebackers coach, next head coach is not necessarily going to want to do that. So you probably could find a way. But I definitely think there's a role for him going forward. But I also think it's kind of what he wants to do. He, after calling plays for 8 games, he might want to look and think. I mean, it's months ago, but there were some rumblings that there were some FCS schools that maybe were thinking about, was kind of circling him as a potential play caller. Based on the success of Burton College's past off season. So I could see him going down a level. To keep play calling, duties and try to build his career that way.
It certainly is an option. All right, let's dive into true or false. The rules. There's only 2 of us, so I'll answer each one too. First one, true or false? A new head coach will be named during the bye week. True or false?
I will say false.
I'm going to say false too, and we'll get back to it. But I think that it's just a great opportunity to do it. All right, true or false? Nunzio is right. This offense has talent, but the players are just very young. True or false?
I'll say true for some of the skill positions, but false overall.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. True or false? Isaiah Washington is the promising young wide receiver we've been waiting to see in this program. He had a big game against Liberty. True or false?
I I will say true for now. I want to say push, just because he had a big game against Liberty, but other games this year, it's just been kind of like he's got a lot of targets just because he's the one tall guy who can sort of get separation downfield.
Yep. Let's line him up against Illinois. I agree. I'm going to go false with it for now. Johnny Langan will start a game at quarterback in 2020. True or false?
False.
False. Wow. Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to say true on that one. True or false? Art Sikowski will start a game at quarterback in 2020.
True.
I'm going to go false on that one. This is good. We'll have a good conversation. True or false? Cole Snyder will start a game at quarterback in 2020.
False.
I'm going to go true. True or false? The quarterback who starts the most games for Rutgers in 2020 is not on the roster. True or false?
I'm going to say false, but I think Art will start the most games in 2020.
All right. I'm going to get true because I think the coach who comes in here is going to do the same thing he did this year and try to find one. So now, all right. So why do you think that this is going to be, even after what you saw from Johnny Langan here, why do you think that he will not start a game next year? What is your rationale for that?
Well, I mean, what he did against Liberty was great, but I'm also have to take into account what he did against Indiana and what he did against Minnesota, and he's still got to play Ohio State and Michigan State and Penn State. I just look. I think Johnny Langan is a kid who I've seen Nunzio compare him to Taysom Hill, Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow won his first national title as kind of like a change of pace guy. They could do a lot of. I look at Johnny and I think he might be a guy who could be have a Flacco like impact. Tom Flacco, I mean, at an FCS school. I just think full-time starting quarterback in the Big Ten under normal circumstances. I don't know if the passing ability is there. They're not going to hire, but I have always told people that if Rutgers were to go triple option, he would be a lethal quarterback in the triple option.
Yeah, he would. He would. The way he carried those Liberty players. I mean, it was a pretty impressive physical performance.
I mean, obviously those options are limited, but I think Johnny Langan could be a Heisman Trophy candidate potentially if he was in a triple option.
Well, we might be going a little too far there, but
maybe.
So you think Art's going to stick around, and Art is going to is going to be your starter against Monmouth? That would be your prediction?
Yes.
I understand that he's not transferred. He's made no indication he's going to, but it's just hard to imagine that you're going to stop, redshirt, sit out this year, and then come back and really be that. I mean, it's just a tough scenario. Is it dependent on who the next coach is? What if the system? This is what I come back to. What if the new coach wants to run the spread or wants to run something that doesn't suit his skill set necessarily?
Well, I mean, I guess what I just come back to is I think that the more often than not, whatever offense they bring in is gonna fit Art Sikowski. I just tend to think that we talk about this. I just think there is obviously Nunzio runs a version of the spread that needs a dual threat guy, but I think that there's also offenses out there that fit Art. I also think, too, it's a lot different for Nunzio to kind of pick up all these broken pieces 4 weeks in and say, this is what we have to do to be successful, as opposed to, the new head coach is hiring an offensive coordinator. You figure 2 weeks after that guy gets the job, who then can say, this is what I want to do. Now let's go get junior college players to fit this. Let's go hit the transfer portal, all that. So I just think that when you're starting from scratch in December, it's a lot easier to build something that fits Art than it is, in October. And the other thing, too, is just I think that whoever the next head coach is, they've got to meet with Blackshear and Art day one and end it right, figure it out right then and there what they're doing.
Yep, we need you to be part of this. This is what we're going to do. Yeah, there's no question. Which is why another reason why the point about making this hire during the bye week, and I get it that it's probably not going to happen. It's such a missed opportunity, Cratch. And I mean, so you do so many things here. You get a chance to evaluate your own roster, a chance to make a late recruiting pitch before the very early December signing date. You get a chance to take some of the attention off what is going to be just the brutal final 3 games of this year, starting with Ohio State coming to Piscataway the week after that. I just, it just seems like that if you were going to make this decision to fire Ash when you did, that you would be in a position where you would look at this and say, if I can get this done by that date, it makes a hell of a lot of sense on so many levels.
It certainly does, but the reason why I say false is just because everything they have done up to this point, which, as you said at the top of the show, really isn't that much.
Right.
This points to them taking this to the that kind of moment that Pat said, when the day after he fired Ash, I hope to do this after the season, a couple days after. Because one, like, if you're going to hire a coach on the bye week, so who are we talking about? Nunzio is going to get the permanent job. I mean, Nunzio is going to probably be 1-4 at that point. You're not giving him the permanent job, and about to play Ohio State. Who else is out there? Greg and Butch Jones.
Mm-hmm. The best candidate and probably a good plan B, if you ask me. But okay.
No, I guess. But then my second or third question to Pat Hobbs is going to be: so Pat, you just paid a search firm six figures to then hire the guy who everybody in town wants, or the guy who was before Ash was fired was telling people he wanted a job. I could have gotten you set up for this. Yeah. So that's why I just think if you're going to hire a search firm, if you're going to say you want to let Nunzio get the full 8-game runway, if you want to consider him, it just would be kind of difficult. And it would just be a surprise to me and go against what the foundation they seem to be laying when they started if they made the hire on the bye week.
Right. All right. Schiano rumor of the week. I actually have one. This is funny. I get so many. People, again, the difference between information and theories. But this was a guy who sent me an email convinced that not only was Greg Schiano on campus last week, the deal was done, and the press conference was going to be this Saturday, in 5 days, despite the fact that the team is in Illinois. I thought that was a pretty good rumor. I don't know if you got any good ones.
Well, yeah, I actually got a direct message from somebody who doesn't follow me on Twitter. I actually found it in my other folder Sunday afternoon. Any truth to the rumor that Greg is in the Hale Center with Jeff and Amy Towers right now?
Right now.
And I'm like, I don't think so.
I love it. Okay, well, yeah, it's possible. I don't know.
Hey, you never know.
All right, so let's get some good Rutgers Insider questions here. As always, subscribe to NJ.com/text. I think it's been getting better as this goes along. I know we don't have much news lately, but we've been trying to give you guys as much information as we can. And you can also see a nice selfie of me and Greg Schiano if you really want to subscribe. That's worth your $4.99 entirely itself. All right, lots of good ones here. Would you say that because of all the pressure on Pat Hobbs let me read this again. If Pat Hobbs hires Greg Schiano, he can't lose because he doesn't have the pressure on him. I guess the guy's asking, this is it would be a freebie because you're bringing in a guy with experience. You're bringing in a guy who everybody wants. Hey, look, I hired the guy you wanted. Football's on him now. Do you think you buy into that theory?
Yes. I mean, that's what a lot of people, prominent people who want Greg have said that, it's almost like this is a free pass. I mean, I don't go as far as to say, Pat would get to potentially join the Gene Smith club and get to hire a third football coach. I don't think that is necessarily what would happen. But yeah, I mean, I do think that, obviously if Greg were to come here and not succeed, people would blame Greg. They wouldn't blame Pat.
Right. This was one I can answer. Was Hobbs at the same event as Greg Schiano? He was not at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, so they did not converse there. And this person wants to know lots of rumors that Hobbs does not like Schiano. Is any of that true? I mean, look, we've heard the same stuff. I guess it's the best way I can put it, that there is, for whatever reason, the two of them have not had a conversation at this point. So that leads you to believe. I don't know that they've, what the origin of that is. If it's just, from afar, both are skeptical of the other. Again, this falls under the category, not information, but speculation. But yeah, the fact that, that where there's smoke and the fact that they haven't had a conversation yet leads me to believe there's probably fire there. Let me see what else we got to jump into. Here's a good one. Can either of you advise what the story is on Micah Clark? And if you're not, there's a name that hasn't come up since he came onto campus. He was the first big recruit that Chris Ash got, and you thought when they got him, you're like, hey, look, this guy's already coming and getting 4 stars. I mean, good for him. What happened to him? Scratch? Do we know?
Yeah, I basically, he battled injuries and kind of his personal issues. He missed about the second half of the 2018 spring practice due to personal issues. It seemed like that's been kind of a recurring issue. Hasn't played this year. Still on the roster. I think he's one of those guys who, in all likelihood, I don't see him, playing at Rutgers going forward. You never know, though. I think it's not a situation like my understanding has always been that they've never wanted to, like with McLean Carter, like they never wanted to go like the medical red shirt, the medical retirement route or anything.
Right.
So he's still with the program, and I just think now at this point, Ash never wanted to discuss it, and honestly, I thought that was kind of to his detriment, because I thought as you mentioned, when a kid's a big time 4-star recruit, and he's an in-state guy, and there's a lot of excitement, that guy just can't just never see the field, and people forget about him. So Ash never wanted to discuss it. I just think at this point, it's not really Nunzio's, cross the bear, obviously, but I do think it's probably something that when the next head coach comes in, I don't think it's top priority, but I would expect that it'll get sorted out that way. But I just think it's been some stuff off the field for him, and obviously injuries on the field have kind of contributed to him not really making much of an impact so far.
I mean, your sense is not to play college football at all.
That's my sense. Right? I don't think he's going to leave Rutgers. I think he's very, Micah has always been very active in all the community service stuff at Rutgers. Everyone loves him. Big, smiling, happy guy. So I just think that for whatever reason it hasn't really worked out or come together for him so far. I don't expect him to contribute this year, and I think that it's kind of a holding pattern until the next head coach comes in.
Right. Here's a good question along those lines so with respect to potential transfers and immediate eligibility waivers, do you know how the NCAA considers a coaching change among the factors it considers in granting an application? So, I mean, obviously the question means, so the new coach comes in, are these players who don't want to, is it an automatic see ya if the players want to leave? I mean, is that your sense from what you've seen across the country?
I mean, they can leave, they can go. I think no, I don't think it's going to be a free pass. I mean, we don't really know. It's going to be kind of an interesting offseason coming up, because we saw this past offseason when it was just kind of widespread free agency. After that, the NCAA kind of indicated, they didn't like this kind of perception of free agency. Maybe this was unintended consequences. They were going to kind of buckle down and tighten the situation. So I think most people expect that it's going to be a lot more difficult to get a waiver for immediate eligibility.
Right.
This going into going into 2020, going into coming off season. The one thing I will say about this, and fans can take it in the spirits intended, a lot of these guys on the roster, if they're going to move on, I think they're probably moving on down a level.
Yeah, there's no question.
Where they're immediate eligible. And I also think too, we expect, I think, especially wide receiver. They had all those wide receivers in spring ball, and everyone said, oh, someone's going to transfer out. Someone's going to transfer out. They had one transfer out, I believe, Zahir Lacewell, who ended up going to junior college to play defense. And I think that was an academic issue. Better or worse, Chris Ash didn't have a lot of recruiting success. We're not going to beat that dead horse again. But a lot of these guys, I think, make a conscious decision, some guys. Would I be better off going to an FCS school and battling for playing time, or am I better off being here on a Big Ten football team where I don't necessarily play a lot, but I'm with my friends, I'm on the team, big school, and I'm going to get a Rutgers degree at the end of the day?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things, too. I think we might see a couple of kids grad transfer and go down a level and maybe just get a chance to play football. I think we also might see some kids who fans would kind of look at the roster and say, oh, that guy hasn't played, he's going to transfer out. They might just stay around because this is their best option.
Right. Absolutely. All right, here's a good one, two, actually, that are good. So what is the single most realistic splash hire as an assistant for Rutgers staff next be? next year. That's a good, obviously it depends on who the head coach is, which we don't know, but some names of assistants they can realistically, first one, obviously that springs to mind is Anthony Campanile. I don't know if that is possible. I don't know what he makes. I have to look it up what he makes out there. And if he's at Michigan, so he's already got, he's in a better spot. Any other names that you can come up with that you go, if they got that guy, that would be a great hire.
Well, I think right now the single biggest splash hire they could make is Jeff Hafley. Jeff Hafley,
right? But he makes almost $1 million at Ohio State.
But he has become the guy, because of Ohio State's success and his ties to Rutgers and New Jersey guy. I think
it's not realistic, though. I guess that's a question.
I've heard that Pat Hobbs has told people that if for the right coordinator, they can throw down up to around seven figures. I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah, but this is the thing. If they think they can pay $4 million, a guy like Greg or a guy like Butch Jones might say, "I don't need to make $4 million. Take $1 million from me and go give $500,000 on top of the coordinator jobs, to bring someone in." So, look, I think it would be a short-term thing with Hafley because Hafley's going to be a head coach eventually.
Right.
But I think Hafley would be the biggest splash. I think Anthony would be second. I think Fran Brown, obviously at Temple, Baylor, tremendous success recruiting South Jersey would be third. I think Partridge would. I don't think Chris Partridge would be the big splash hire that it would have been a couple of years ago, just because one, I think anybody who, anytime if a Rutgers coach wants to consider Chris Partridge, he's got to weigh the positive and the negative. And obviously Partridge, it might not be the same because obviously a lot of the guys that Partridge kind of butted heads with in North Jersey are not here, not in the mix anymore. Like him and Toll butted heads. Obviously Greg Toll's not coaching anymore. So, and I think too kind of fascinating is get back to what we talked about earlier. Nunzio and Chris Partridge were not exactly exchanging Christmas cards.
Yeah,
there's bad blood there. And if Nunzio's going to be on the staff and you want to bring his brother back, and then you obviously Partridge going. So I think he would kind of be a splash, but I think he's lower down the list. But I think Hafley is the guy. He is the man of the moment right now. So I'd say he's the biggest splash hire they could make.
This is the other question about the staff. Who are your predictions for offensive and defensive coordinators? Which is basically impossible. But hey, it's a podcast. It's fun. I'm going to say if Greg is the coach, I do not have a great prediction for who offensive coordinator could be. I know John McNulty obviously is a guy a lot of people are going to name, but I think Greg is going to come here and be smart enough or knows he's going to have to run some sort of spread offense that might make not McNulty's not necessarily the guy for that. Defensively, though, I tell you what, the guy who had a hell of a lot of success here, Rob Smith, when he was the defensive coordinator, ran an aggressive style of defense that, he did most successful defense arguably in school history. He left because they couldn't keep him. They couldn't pay him. Back when they just let assistants go for anything. I think he's a guy that makes sense. I'm trying to come up with other names, Cratch. I don't know who you have as far as who would be logical candidates for coordinators. I no one on the staff really strikes me as one.
No, I think if defensive coordinator, I would say, I think Anthony in that situation, I'm just going to rule out Hafley if it's Greg. I think Anthony would probably be a top target. Bob Frazier's up there as like a special assistant in New England.
How about that?
Rob Smith, you mentioned. Joe Rossi's having a lot of success in Minnesota with PJ Fleck.
Yeah.
They win the Big Ten West. Yeah. They try to overpay, outbid Minnesota, bring him in. Another guy that I thought about potentially, I think another thing too is Greg going to want to have a heavy, thumbprint on the defense?
Yeah,
because we see other schools. A guy who I think it would be kind of fascinating. Like Jim Panagos. He's a great. Defensive line needs help. He's a great defensive line coach, but he's got that personality. Everybody in New Jersey loves him.
He's got to be on the staff. Yeah, absolutely. He's a guy you got to
be on the staff. But you just say we're going to give you the. That I always thought that one of the big mistakes that Ash made this past offseason was that. They made a run at Anthony Campanile and it didn't work out. And then they hired Andy Boo, who, basically was just brought in to run Chris's system and it hasn't worked. I always thought Chris made a major mistake by not being creative and saying, I'm going to run the defense, but I'm going to hire Fran Brown and we're going to give him the title. Or I'm going to hire Jim Panagos and we're going to give him the title. Right. But I'll still be it was Chris's defense.
Yeah.
That's, like, there had to be a difference there had to be some happy medium between hiring Anthony Campanelli and hiring Andy Boo. Like, there had to be some happy medium with a guy who's a good coach, but he's also going to help you get guys. So I think that could be something Greg considers. Offensive coordinator. How about Matt Canada?
Wow, yeah, that's a great name. Yeah. But wouldn't he be a head coaching candidate guy if he wanted to?
I mean, you would think he would, but I mean, he did such good work at Maryland last year, and he didn't get a job. He's been out for a year. The reason why I mentioned Matt Canada is because he recruited Art heavily.
Yep, he did.
Offered him that's more than one school. So I think he's a guy who probably he brings an offense, a spread offense, jet sweep stuff. I think Art would fit his scheme. As for McNulty, I don't think he'll be back as offense coordinator. I think that Greg would probably want to run a spread, but I would not be surprised if John was a position coach. I mean, that if Greg says, "Hey, I need to keep Art," bring John in as a quarterbacks coach. I mean, John can coach quarterbacks, and Art, I'm pretty sure, would be doing backflips if John was back in the room. So I think that was a devastating thing for Art to kind of lose John, especially when he had those 2 games where he was sort of starting to turn that corner.
Well, we've solved all the problems. There you go. There's the staff for next year. Thanks, everybody. We'll take your tips in the jar outside. All right, predictions. Hey, good. This is good. So we actually have another game that's not as easy to predict, maybe. I don't know. I just looked it up. It was Illinois -20, which is still...
I think it's moved a point toward the Scarlet Knights. I think it opened at 21.
It did. All right. So that's a robust number. A lot of money on Liberty last week. People took a bath after, I think, Vegas had to close several casinos based on the Maryland and Minnesota lines. So which direction are you going here with this one, Cratch?
I think the line sounds about right. I'll say Illinois wins 34-13 or something.
Okay.
I think Rutgers still have some success, but as I said, this Illinois team playing really well. They obviously upset Wisconsin. They kind of hammered a shorthanded Purdue team last week. But I just come back to the fact that this is rubber hits the road, do or die time for Lovie Smith. He's 4-4. He's got two definite winnable games left in the schedule. 3 if you count Michigan State. He can't lose this game.
Yeah.
And I also think too what hurts Rutgers a little bit is 3:30 start means that people are probably going to be a little bit more into the game in Champaign as opposed to kind of that sleeping, 11 a.m. kickoff. So 2:30 local time. At 11 a.m. kickoff, that kind of, I think, gives an East Coast team a little bit of a chance to kind of get into kind of a boring, sleepy atmosphere, takes the home crowd out of it. I think game being later in the day, that hurts Rutgers.
Yeah, I have to admit, and I didn't see Illinois game against Purdue, but I did see the box score, and the fact that they rushed for 250 yards it's just.
And that's an issue too, because this Rutgers defense cannot stop the run.
So I just can't imagine a scenario where they stopped the run against it. They couldn't stop it against Liberty. I mean, just the number of guys running free. It's not good. So I guess it's going to be another one of those 41-10 kind of games, and that I think then you're kind of barreling toward. The 3 games after that just get harder and harder. So it's I'm glad they got that win and got that losing streak ended, but I think it's going to be a rough finish here for the season. All right, anything else? Basketball Media Day tomorrow. What else do we got going on here?
Wrestling Media Day Thursday. Wrestling season starts Saturday with a home quad. I will be in Illinois with Sarge if we find him, and you will not be.
I will not. No, I'm going to sit this one out. I need to watch this 7-year-old girls soccer game on Saturday is what I'll be doing.
But no.
Yeah.
We're good.
We're good. All right. Let's sign off from here. Thanks for listening. Again, subscribe, NJ.com/text. Steve Politti, James Cratch. We'll be back after the Illinois game, maybe even with Keith Sargent. We'll see you then. Bye.